Like I was literally obsessed. I would write my goals down when I woke up in the morning and then before I went to bed every night. I still write my goals down once a day, but at that point, I was on a mission. I'm becoming financially free. This is happening, and I just became obsessed with it. It's probably just a bunch of things lining up. And yeah, I just became obsessed. And I think for anybody that kind of takes a path that's similar, you can make it work with anything if you have the right mindset, kind of like a growth mindset, and you educate yourself, you surround yourself with the right people. It's amazing how the world just kind of opens up for you mentally, and then with all the opportunities too. So I think all those things kind of hit just at the right time.
Welcome to another podcast. I think this will be episode 5 or 6. Lucky to have my buddy Jon Farling on. We met a handful of years ago through real estate at a mastermind. Have a lot in common, come from a blue-collar background. And Jon's got a great podcast, the Do More podcast, which I've been on probably about a year ago now. I think you've been doing it about a year. We'll get into that, but wanted to hear his story, bring him on the Beyond the Norm podcast, and just get to chat with him for a little bit, and hopefully you guys get some nuggets out of it. So, with that, welcome Jon to the glorious platform. I'll try not to shake my computer here. We were just talking offline about the joys of technology and how we're both not the most tech savvy guys and doing this stuff, but it's still fun and still like to share these stories and put these podcasts out for people, hopefully inspire them, help them by hearing our stories and kind of going from there. So Jon, welcome. Why don't you open up by giving us a little bit of your background and just kind of as much or as little as you want about your story, kind of where you're at today from getting started in this real estate game. Jon's in self-storage. I'll let him explain that, but then to kind of where you're at now.
Yeah, well, one, appreciate you having me on, and excited that you're starting this podcast and going down this road, and excited to see where you're going to go with it. But yeah, appreciate you having me on. So I live in Columbus, Ohio, as of right now since 2019. I got into self-storage. I own, 14 sites across Ohio. But before that, I worked 9 to 5 out of college, did outside sales jobs, landed with 2008, I think, landed with a small electrical contractor in Columbus, and did basically everything for them: outside sales, estimating, project management, HR, you name it, I did it. Other than paying the bills, I did pretty much everything else. So I learned a lot from that. And before we had our first kid, we can dive into whatever you want, but I figured just kind of summarize all this.
Yeah.
We had our first kid in 2014, and leading up to that, I was coaching basketball, so I kind of had like a side hustle, side gig. But I knew I couldn't do that after our kid was born. Then I started really focusing on like future finances, retirement, how we're going to pay for our kids' college education, all those things. And it just completely changed my mindset, and bought 4 single-family rentals, did a flip between 2015 and 19, and then ended up finding storage and quit my 9 to 5 in 2020 at basically the peak of COVID.
Yeah.
And then, the rest is history. Now I'm a full-time entrepreneur.
Yeah. Great thing.
Yeah.
So that was like the top line there. So what do you think? So it's interesting you brought up, you were about to have a kid. We don't talk about that a ton. A lot of times we talk about like we hate our job, or we just knew something was different. So talk a little bit about how having a kid on the way maybe change your mindset. You talked about thinking about future. Maybe talk about how before kids, because I'm similar in that situation. Like before kids, you're just going along, you're plugging along, doing your job. Like you're not really thinking 401k, future, kids, how we're going to pay for this stuff. And then you kind of get it, just like reality hits, you kind of grow up, all that stuff. Talk a little bit about how your mindset shifted there and how that changed for you.
Yeah. Well, I think there's probably a couple things there. And looking back, one, that I love my job. At times, I definitely liked it. But there were things that, and I'm not going to talk bad about the owner, but because who knows, he may listen to this. But I'm definitely thankful for going through it. But there are definitely things that I didn't agree with, culture-wise, and a lot of things that went on, and how the business was ran, and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So a lot of that played into me wanting to do something on my own. But I think the thing that really kicked it off was I went from basketball was a huge part of my life. And when I was done playing, then I started coaching. So it's still a part of my life, right? That was still an identity of mine. Once we had our first kid, for whatever reason, that last season of coaching basketball, there was like a switch that just flipped off. And I didn't have that, I guess, identity that basketball needed to be in my life. Mm-hmm. So that was probably one of the bigger things that it was like, okay, now what? What's next? So it was like both those things kind of colliding at the same time. And yeah, I was like, I remember running a retirement calculation, and I plugged in the numbers, what I was making at the time, and I made decent money. I was making over six figures and had pretty good freedom with the job as well. But yeah. I plugged in retirement calculations, and I'm like, if I want to make what I'm making now and retire, making the same amount, right? Because usually when you retire, they want you to make, or that's set up so that you make less than what you're making now. Yeah. Yeah. I would have had to have, I don't remember exact numbers, 3 to 5 million. And I think I was on track for like 1.5 million at the age of like 65. Yeah. So I'm like, I'll never retire. So it just kind of opened my eyes. Like, I need to learn more. And real estate's always been a part of my life. My parents built spec homes, new build homes growing up. Parents had a duplex. No, it was a triplex at one point. So I've always been interested in real estate, and that was just kind of my first go-to. And Bigger Pockets podcast, and kind of just went from there. Yeah.
So I was going to ask how you transitioned, like picked real estate. Obviously, having family background in it, at least gave you a door open to having a taste of what that looked like and whatnot. Talk a little bit about Bigger Pockets. That's something I used to like kind of feel half ashamed, like, oh, I got, Bigger Pockets is where I cut my teeth. But as you talk to people, it's like almost everybody you talk to has stumbled on Bigger Pockets and it's such a great resource from beginners to guys like us who've been in it and even bigger, just again, it's a podcast like this, hearing people's stories, thinking, hey, if this guy can do it, I can do it too. Talk a little bit about how you stumbled on that and like what that did for you, what that looked like for you.
Yeah. And I'd love to know the numbers of how many millionaires or people that have gained financial freedom that kind of started with Bigger Pockets, listening to that. Because everyone that I run to, like you said, it's like everyone has listened to shows at some point. I found it somewhat early. I want to say I found it probably around the time of 2013, 2014. So it's still early. Yeah. I remember listening to the first episode, and it was absolutely awful. It was, it was just two guys hanging out basically. But yeah, like you said, the stories of anyone can do it, and I was hooked. The podcast, I was hooked. I was hooked on the stories. Yeah, that's probably a big reason why I'm doing a podcast. I'm guessing probably a reason why you are too, because it affected our lives so much in a positive way that it's like, how do I give that back? But yeah, I just got hooked on the podcast and the stories, and it's like, well, if this person can get financially free, why can't I? And it's like story after story after story, and it's just everyday normal people.
Yeah,
Nothing special about them.
Yeah, teacher, plumber, and somebody came from nothing, like immigrated here and had nothing and somehow bought, their first project, raised money. Like you just heard that borrowed belief was like, man. And I remember it took me a long time. I consumed that probably for 2 years before I like pulled the trigger, because I had similar story. I think it was like 2016 that I started kind of consuming that really. And then it actually built the confidence in me after, so long of listening to that, like, okay, I can do this. It was just like taking the action, growing a pair and saying, all right, find a property and go put it to practice.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it, of gaining confidence, listening to it, right? I mean, that's the same with me. Like, we didn't know what we were doing, but we heard other people doing it, and you just gain confidence by listening to other people's stories, and you kind of plug in pieces like, okay, I didn't understand this, but I can understand this piece over here, and you just start plugging pieces in, and you just take action.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. How long were you kind of prepping before you pulled the trigger on your first deal?
I looked at quite a few deals through 13, 14, because I remember started looking at deals when I was still coaching basketball. So it was probably end of 13 when I started looking at deals. I think I finally closed a year later. I think we closed, it may have been like the 1st of January 15, somewhere in there. Gotcha. So it was about a year of looking and educating. But really, like, getting after it was probably 6 months, right? Because there's probably 6 months of dabbling, trying to figure out, is this really the vehicle? Listening to different podcasts, because I have shiny object syndrome too. I've looked at every single business you can possibly think of to purchase, and I was looking at those at the time too. Yep. So it was probably 6 months of somewhat education back and forth, and then it was 6 months of, okay, let's start looking at houses. And back then, you could actually buy a house off the MLS, and it would make sense as a rental. Yeah. Which is crazy. Looking at the prices then, I wish I would have bought every single house that was listed. But
dude, same thing. I bought my first, I had a rental, the house that my wife and I fixed up, we hung on to that. We kind of just fell into that one as a rental. But the first actual, like, I'm going out to buy something was off. First 2 or 3 were off the MLS. And yeah, if I could have bought 10 of them back then, at the time, I didn't think that. I was like, this is a little pricey. But now, if I'd have bought 10, it'd be great. But,
yeah, that's crazy. Well, and like a side note too, I bought 3 of them I bought in and around Columbus. I bought one that was in a smaller town, Northwest Ohio. The value of that house has gone up a little bit, but not much. The things I bought around Columbus at least doubled, if not tripled in value. Yeah. So that's another thing to look at when you're looking at markets. I cash flowed very well in that small town, but the appreciation that I got was a lot less than what I got in and around Columbus. Yeah,
that's actually a great point. Is typically in the Midwest, we get great cash flow, but we don't get the appreciation. Columbus obviously is an exception. Cities are usually an exception, but in those rural areas, you're probably not going to see that appreciation that you'd see, in those other areas. But so talk a little bit about the transition, because you have a self-storage empire now. So you started in the multifamily, flipping houses, small single family maybe, but when and how did you transition into that, into the self-storage game?
Yeah, I would say, I don't know exact years, 16, 17. I started after I realized, like, I bought one single family rental per year, and then did a flip. So there's 5 years there from when I started to when I transitioned to storage. And I was still looking at businesses to buy, but I was trying to find any vehicle I could to become financially free. Like, I was completely obsessed with it. Yeah. If anything, like, I was trying to leave my job, but if anything, I'm like, if I can get a side hustle that would pay all of our bills, I'm like, that would be unbelievable. I couldn't even fathom it at the time. But yeah, I mean, I looked at apartments, multifamily, businesses, and it was probably around 18. I found a car wash for sale right down the road from us. And I'm like, this is a no-brainer. I could work here, a couple hours a day after work, or even my job was flexible, so I could stop by pretty much any point in time during the day.
Yeah.
So I went down that rabbit hole and was trying to purchase it. Looking back, I'm glad I didn't, because the returns weren't that great. It would have propelled us a little bit, but the cash flow wasn't that great. But the deal ended up falling apart, and I don't remember why, but it fell apart. But what I found out was you can get an SBA loan for a car wash, and SBA loans are a little more. You can bring less of a down payment to the table. So in some cases you can bring 5%. Some cases you can bring 0%. I was looking at between 10 and 15%. So for me, I have not raised money. I've put my money in my deals. So for me, thinking, hey, I can get into commercial asset space with a car wash for 10 to 15% down, that'd be huge for me. And then I found out that you could do that with self-storage. So I started digging into self-storage, and that was probably late 18, and then just started direct mail marketing and started picking up properties in 19.
Yeah. Now I wouldn't, so want to unpack some of that. Yeah, so that's crazy. SBA loans, it's something you kind of forget about in the real estate space, or at least I do. Being more multifamily, that there's so many vehicles out there, and yeah, it's gotten a little tougher with higher interest rates now. But for people listening, like, there's so many creative ways to get into real estate, and you said I was obsessed with getting financially free. So, I feel like I was the same way. Once I had that click and I was a similar situation to you, didn't hate my job, was, doing well, making decent money, but just something was more. I was looking down the road of time of, like, I don't want to be here 20, 30 years. Like, what can I get into? And same thing, found real estate, and didn't know at the time, how it was going to work, but just knew I had to get a hold of hard assets. That was my thing, is like, get some hard assets. And I put my own money in as well. But I want to go back, like, what caused that obsession for you? Obviously, we talked about you were having a kid, you kind of lost that identity of basketball and kind of brought this new identity on of, like, I want to get financially free. How do you, I wanted to touch on this. So you talked about direct marketing. I know I'm kind of bouncing around now. This will be like a package question. So the mindset and, like, the shift of, like, getting, like, what made you obsessed with that? But then just another thing is, like, I know you're easy to talk to guy. I'd say similar to myself, you kind of just, when you hit it off with somebody, you just know, like, oh, okay, like-minded, easy to talk to. But I don't consider myself like a super extrovert. I wouldn't consider you a super extrovert either. But yet you were like, I'm direct mailing, I'm doing this. Like, that's one thing I keep saying I need to start doing for deals, and haven't done yet. So you obviously got a little bit out of some comfort zone there. You probably learned some things, but what made you obsessed and kind of drove that? And what shifted in you to be like, I'm doing these things, and come hell or high water, I'm going for it?
Yeah, that's a good question. For the mindset thing, I think it was like what you said about gaining confidence. At that point, I had 2 or 3 rentals. They were working. They weren't great, but they were working, and I got confidence from that. So after I gained the confidence and at least some type of knowledge, then it just became like, oh, I can do this. And then it just became, I was definitely obsessed, like, without a doubt. Why did I get there? I don't know. It's just one of those things that things start lining up, and just became obsessed with it. Like, my job was probably, again, I didn't exactly hate it. I did not love it. I didn't like the culture. I was not energized getting there, going there every day. So yeah, that was probably part of it.
And it's probably a little like me when you get a taste of the real estate. Like when I like, just like you said, I had that confidence, was scared as hell to get it. I was like, I should have backed out, but then it started working. And then you see it like, yeah, it's not life changing, but it's like, hey, I thought this could work. It is working. I put this plan together. Like I can do it again. And then you get that taste, and then you still have that W-2 over here. And it's like, well, this tastes a lot better than what's going on over here.
Yep. No, and yeah, that's definitely a piece of it. And I think too, probably a lot of pieces, but I remember I really dove into, I mean, even while I was working, I was watching videos of Grant Cardone. Back then he had like, what was it, GCTV or whatever, and he had a different show every single day. He had 10X. He had all these things, become obsessed. I think that's one of his books. Like I was literally obsessed. I would write my goals down when I woke up in the morning and then before I went to bed every night. I still write my goals down once a day, but at that point I was on a mission. I'm becoming financially free. This is happening. And I just became obsessed with it. We also had a second kid in 2017. So my guess it's probably just a bunch of things lining up. And yeah, I just became obsessed. And I think for anybody that kind of takes a path that's similar, you can make it work with anything if you have the right mindset, kind of like a growth mindset, and you educate yourself, you surround yourself with the right people. This could have been anything, right? It worked out with storage, but it could have been anything. It could have been Subway franchises. It could have been car washes. It's amazing how the world just kind of opens up for you mentally, and then with all the opportunities too. So I think all those things kind of hit just at the right time.
Yeah. I love that, man. I love that. I couldn't agree more with, as you expand, and like just the simple thing of writing goals down opens up your mind to see not roadblocks, but opportunity. And I think that's what separates guys like us from, average people or other people. Not putting anybody down, just saying like, to go out and do something is, it starts with little things of watching videos, writing goals down, getting inspired, like doing that. That's the action steps, those little action steps to taking the big one of like going and buying something. And so many people don't do that. And then, getting around other like-minded people. If we can get confidence from listening to Bigger Pockets podcast, the confidence of meeting Jon in person and hearing his story is 10 times. It's like that on steroids. And then you have somebody that you can bounce things off of, and it just can propel you so much quicker to where you're going. So, that's awesome, man. And it's, that could be a huge takeaway for somebody that's listening, is just try and take baby steps, because those baby steps grow. It's kind of that snowball effect, which I know you didn't end with that first storage. So talk a little bit about, all right, you get into your first storage deal, how'd that grow to where you're at now?
Yeah. So, and you asked about the marketing piece and the introvert piece. So I'll kind of tie that together. I am an introvert. I mean, it's funny because the more we label ourselves, the more we become that label, right? Mm-hmm. So if I'm constantly saying I'm an introvert, I'm probably gonna become more of an introvert. So I've been working on, kind of, I don't want to say shedding that, but trying to work on that. But yeah, and the best way I heard described was, like one-on-one, I love it. I love being on one-on-one. That, like, just our conversation right now lights me up, fires me up. And I'll have a ton of energy after this. If there's like 3, 4, 5 people, and we were just together a couple of weeks ago, like my energy drains like that. And if you watch it, like you probably notice it too. It's like I start off kind of on a high, and then like 20 minutes later, I'm just like sitting there, like I just get, my energy just is drained.
Yeah.
That's what I'm seeing. And when we've got, myself and another guy have our own mastermind. We do that for 2 days. It is like, I put on a different hat. I have to be a different person, and it is absolutely draining. And I have to step away and like, kind of re-energize myself by myself, just being by myself with no noise and just hang out. It's even tough for me. Like I'll go back to the hotel room even for like half hour. I want to call the family, but I'm like, I can't deal with any more noise or anything at this point to where I just have to recharge. So that's what I've noticed with that. But as far as like direct mail marketing, usually I'm meeting one person. I'm meeting the seller, right? So that's for me, and coming from outside sales, that's my strong point is meeting people one-on-one and trying to sell or buy from there.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So you did that, and is that where your first deal came from? Your first self-storage deal?
Yeah, most of my deals I think I've only bought 3 or 4 that were listed. Most of them have been from direct mail marketing, and it's just simple. And I was doing direct mail marketing and never worked. When I bought single family rentals, I was sending those out too. Got some nibbles, but never bought anything off that. So I had at least years of practice to kind of fine tune that. And storage is a little bit different than single family homes when selling. But yeah, I just hit at the right time, and my goal was to get the person on the phone and then schedule a meeting and meet them on site. And then I kind of sold myself from there. So yeah, first 2 in 2019, bought I think 3 more in 2020, and they all came from basically direct mail marketing letters that I sent out.
Awesome. So when we met in, I think it was 21 or 22 maybe.
22, yeah.
So when we met, you were kind of there, and you can fill in, but I'll just kind of get the tape. You were kind of saying like, you kind of completed everything you'd wanted to do. Like you were cash flow good. And you were just like, I just needed to kind of come get re-inspired, kind of looking for the next thing. So you kind of just on a whim did that mastermind group. And since then I've seen like, just, we don't talk every day, but I've seen just from my seat and knowing you, like, it's like you put gas on a fire. It's like, I don't know how much you bought, but you started the podcast, you joined another group, you're killing it. So talk a little bit about where you were at then, and then what kind of changed for you there.
Yeah, no, well, one, I appreciate that. And yeah, you hit the nail on the head that I went to that mastermind, and then, an event after that for the same reason was like, I was very, very comfortable, financially free. And, yeah, just, I mean, we don't have to can't go into specifics, but, yeah, just comfortable is the right word. And I knew I needed to do more, but I'm like, it's like working out, right? Everyone wants to work out, but not everyone has the desire to do that. And you have to have some type of reasoning, right? And then that reasoning, you have to keep stacking it. Like for me, I struggled with working out consistently back in probably, 16, 17, something like that. Cause I'm like, what am I working out for? I'm not training for a sport, not doing anything. I'm not overly overweight or anything like that. So it was tough for me to get going. But once I started stacking days in a row, then it became easier. So the same sort of kind of thing happened with real estate investing and professionally. I had to find a new why, because my first why, I crushed it. I wanted to become financially free, and I did that and felt like, in a way, I kind of made it. And I knew I needed to put myself in bigger rooms too, to where, and I did that, right? At the event we met at, and then the mastermind we met at, and then the event after that, I'm looking around, I'm like, okay, I haven't done anything. I've been kind of, I don't know. I've been not in the wrong rooms, but eventually you have to graduate, right? Yeah. Get in the bigger rooms to where you're no longer the big fish. And that opened my eyes, and that, that drove me in different ways.
Yeah. Inspired you. Yeah, I agree. You kind of grow in your own pond, and then you get to that point where you're like, oh, because I'll have people be like, man, you have X amount of rentals, like you're killing it. And there's times it's like, yeah, okay, like, as I look back, I'm killing it from where I was and whatnot. But then you go to a group like that or get around guys that are doing more than you, and it's inspiring. It's like, it's not a jealousy thing or a greed thing, at least for me. And I know, I can tell it's not for you either, but it's just, I want to do more. I want to go to that next level. And I love the analogy of like, you're in an elevator and it's like, I went from the first floor to the third floor, and you can kind of help grab somebody's hand from the first floor and get them up to where you're at. But at the same time, you're grabbing somebody that's on the fifth, sixth floor, and they're like, I want to get up there. I want to get to the rooftop and be where that's at. So there's just so many levels to business and entrepreneurship and success in general, but for sure real estate, because you think you're killing it, and you don't have to look too far to find someone that's like, oh wow, they're killing it that much more.
Yep. Well, what's tough, and I'm interested in hear what your thought is, but it's tough too, because as much as you want to get around people that are doing more than you, but you also don't want to get in the mindset where you're jealous and almost look down at what you've done, right? So
Yes.
there's like a balance. So how do you do that? Because I've been thinking about that lately. Like, okay, yeah, being in rooms where I'm not a big fish, I'm looking up to people, but then it's like, I don't want to put myself down and what I've done down either. I want to be proud of that. So it's like,
Right.
how do you deal with that struggle?
Yeah. The book, I don't know if you've ever read The Gap and the Gain, talks
I need
about
to.
that, how we always move the goalposts. Like you were saying, your goal was financial freedom. You got there, and then you're like, okay, you felt a little complacent, so you move the goalpost out further. And I don't know where you're at now with your wife or that, but it's like, but then when you get there, then is it going to be like, well, this guy's got more, I need to move the goalpost out again, and then we forget the gain that we've had and looking back. So that book basically talks about appreciating where you started from to where you're at now. And it doesn't necessarily put down moving that goalpost, but it's just knowing that just because you're going to grow out, or you want to keep growing, or somebody's doing more than you, don't forget about where you came from and all that you've accomplished. Because I struggle with the same thing, and I feel like I'm not complacent, like I'm still trying to grow, but I feel like I've gotten to a place where it's like, okay, if I don't do a deal in the next 6 months, it's okay. I'm not going to get in a bad deal just to say I bought X amount more doors or something like that. So like recently I took on, had them fall in my lap from a wholesaler in an auction, 2 flips. One I'm going to keep, it's just a duplex, but I was like, I'm not doing any more small stuff. And this thing fell in my lap, but it was such a good deal in my hometown, 5 minutes away. It's like, all right, I'll do this one. But,
Well, it's funny too, because it's like all these rooms that we're in, people talk about how many doors you have, how many square feet for self-storage, how many units. None of that matters, right?
No.
But we hear it, and it without a doubt affects us, because all of us are competitive too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, oh, Jimmy's got whatever, 200 doors. I need to have 250. I need to have 300. When really that doesn't matter, because one, you don't know what the other person's making
Right.
from that. And you also don't know their freedom.
Yep.
Like we all, and I was talking to a buddy a few weeks ago about this. We all got into real estate for probably the same reason. That was for freedom, right?
Amen.
Obviously, money comes with that. So it's freedom and money. And then we kind of lose our way a little bit, right? It's like, well, so-and-so has 2,000 doors. I need to get to 2,500.
Yep.
Why? Not just to get, because I see a lot of people doing it. I just need to get that number. I don't care what the deal looks like. I'll finesse it a little bit so that it kind of works, but I just want to get that unit count up.
Yeah.
Like that's wrong. That's bad. That's a bad path to take.
Yep. No, I agree. And it's actually so going back to your original, like, what do you do? Like, how do you balance that greed or that wanting to grow for whatever, like just to hit those numbers versus like being content? And I had the question posed to me in the last couple months of like, how much is enough? Mm-hmm. And it was from somebody that's way more successful than me as far as numbers and all that stuff. But they're more successful. Like I don't know what all they're making, but it was like, how much is enough? And it's like, That's a great question. Like I haven't answered it yet in months, and I haven't like thought about it every day, but I'm like, how much would enough be? Would 100 more doors be it? Would 300 more doors be it? You know, because I'm not even scratching where there's other guys, you know, I'm not even at 500 doors at that point. So it's like, there's people out there with 1,000, multi-thousand, 10,000. So, I think it's a personal thing that we all have to ask us, but I'm with you on, I got into it for freedom. And there's a couple times along the way I've lost that, like, what am I doing this? Like, when you've had a crazy week or crap's hitting the fan, you're just like, what? This isn't the freedom that I was set out to do. So I think it's a balance of like continuing to challenge ourselves, be in those rooms, be inspired by guys doing more and want to keep stepping, but maybe slowing it down to where, like you said, those guys that are trying to just do deals to hit numbers, not getting into that, but just letting it come slower or more natural, and all the while staying content. There's a term for it. It's like content, like discontent, being content. There's some kind of term. It might even be from that book, but where it's basically like, I'm happy with where I'm at now. Like I'm okay with that, but I do want to continue to grow. But it's not like an obsession, like an unhealthy obsession. It's like, just like, because we're growth minded. And it's like, what else am I going to do? I can't sit on a beach for months at a time. You know, I'm not, I have too much ADD for that, but I also don't need to be going crazy and missing my kids growing up just to chase some thing.
Yep.
So,
yep. Which there's absolutely people doing that.
Yep.
I mean, I joined a new mastermind that I look at some of the people in that group, and I would say they're probably doing that. My most important piece is my freedom, right? Like if I lose a little bit of money that's coming in, that's fine, but it's the freedom that I want to keep. And like what drives me too is the helping to others, right?
Yeah.
The more it's somewhat correlated, I think, but the more money you make, typically the more people you can help. And you should be able to help, right? Whether that's maybe you're just hiring, not just, but maybe you're hiring more people, right?
Yeah.
So that's helping. Maybe you're providing more jobs just by making more money and you're purchasing more things. So all that's correlated, and I've looked at it like that. Like, yeah, the more that I do and the more that, obviously we're producers, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're entrepreneurs, we're producers. The world needs us. If the world didn't have us, people like us, not saying just me and you, but people like us, then the world would struggle. So the world needs people like us that do produce and want to produce and give back and help out as much as we can.
Yeah, 100%. And I agree with you. It's almost, and I know it's probably not everybody. There's greedy a-holes out there, but the more that I've been, I just say blessed with, like, you know, yeah, we've gone out, we've earned it and whatnot. But the more I've had that, it's like, I want to help other people. That's why you do your podcast. That's why I do my podcast. Is like, you can do it. Like I was sitting there wondering, like, how can I do this? But people can accomplish. Usually it's financial freedom that they're looking for, but I like the freedom of time to do what I want, when I want, with who I want. And, you know, and I was just reminded, I had a crappy day Monday. I had 2 plumbers cancel on me, and I went up and fixed this job it was in one of my apartments. It was leaking into the barbershop, and plumbers didn't want to do the job. And so I went up Monday night and knocked it all out, got home at 8:30. And I actually texted my wife. I'm like, this isn't the freedom that I wanted from real estate. And it was like, I was just moping. And then the very next day I got to go down to my cabin that I got by having real estate. And I was planting trees, doing work down there, but stuff I like doing, wanted to do. And it was like, oh, this is why I could never take, 2 days in the middle of the week just to go, putz around down there when I was at my W-2. I mean, I could have, but that's using up that little vacation that I don't have to track anymore. So, so yeah, man, it's just not losing sight of that. Because I'm right with you on the, like, freedom is the main driver for what I do. And so if I can grow more to have more freedom or more abundance to give back and just not worry about future, it's all the better. So
For sure. Yeah. Well, your plumbing leak, while you didn't want to go through that, I bet next time you're going to have better systems in place, whether it's better contractors or you've trained somebody or so, you're going to figure something out to where you don't have to put yourself in that situation.
Yep.
So those things, we don't want things like that to happen, but they're good because, typically people like us, that's why we are where we are, because we learn from our mistakes and we're like, okay, I need to put something here. I need to figure out how to plug this hole, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
So that you don't have to do that in the future.
Right. 100%. Everything, all the crappy stuff that I've dealt with since being in business is all stuff that's just that you learn. It fail forward fast.
Yeah.
Like, all right, I screwed that up, like maybe lost a little there, or, did this thing I didn't want to have to do, but it's like never doing that again. And yeah, we learn from it. And I think it's the people that don't learn from it continue to get beat over the head that don't go anywhere. But so as we wrap up, I definitely appreciate your time and chatting here. What's some advice you could give to the old Jon Farling, the old Jimmy Delaware, that are listening out there that are like, I can't, but my situation, because that's one thing I hear as I try and talk with some younger guys and different people in my community, like how'd you do it? And, try and lead them along. There's a lot of like, well, but my situation, like there's always like, mine's unique. Like you could do that, but I can't get over this hump. Like what advice, couple things. I mean, we talked a lot about stuff that they grab from this, but like, what's some top 3 things, 2-3 things that you would tell somebody like that?
Yeah, and that's a good question. And yeah, we run into that stuff all the time. And I think the biggest thing is getting around the right people. And while I do recommend getting in the rooms, like physically with those right people, joining, networking events, masterminds, whatever they are, just with higher level people, that helps. But even just, listening to podcasts like yours, podcasts that will kind of fill your brain with positive energy, positive vibes, like you said, building that confidence. I think that's number one. You got to basically break yourself down mentally to get out of that, oh, well, I'm, kind of victim mentality almost.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's number one. And then from there, things just start lining up, gaining confidence, and then you just, yeah. But I wish I would have, I didn't really get into rooms. I listened to podcasts, which helped, and read books. Those help. But I didn't get into physical rooms and network with people till, I think, 2020. That was the first mastermind that I joined and really first events I ever went to. I tried going to a Bigger Pockets meetup here locally in probably 2015. I was there for probably 15, 20 minutes. Again, I'm an introvert, so it's like, I don't know anybody, so I'm out of here. So I wish I would have gotten around people more and earlier, because it's like rocket fuel. You get around people, you can ask questions, they're open, maybe you find a partner, maybe you find money solutions on how to take deals down. There's just so many resources, but getting around the right people and getting the right information in your head is, that's step one.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. It's such a low barrier to pick up a book or turn on a podcast, because you're driving anyway. Everything's digital. Even if it's if you're driving 15 minutes of work, you listen to 1 hour podcast that week to and from work. You didn't take any extra time to fill your mind with, like you said, positive, like inspiring and tactical, usually tactical info on trying to move the needle. And then I agree with you. I wish I would have got around people physically in those rooms quicker. That would have, and being in those rooms has been the thing that's catalyzed my growth the most. I'd still be I just still been growing, but man, getting in those rooms and being around people, and it's fun. Like us going to the Cavs game a couple weeks ago, like just fun being around other guys and gals that are doing this. That yeah, it just inspires you to want to do more and in a healthy way. So I would just add that another thing is once you do all that, take some action. And I know you would agree with that, is just, I mean, and it could be the smallest things, write down goals, but like setting a date and a timeline, like I'm going to do X, make an offer by this date, or just take some small action steps, because like you talked about earlier, that's those building blocks that help you just move on and blow the doors open to bigger things. So,
yep. No, that's a great point. Yeah, you have to take action. You have to take action, or else you're just going to be in education mode forever. And
yeah,
you got to educate yourself. Like, we're still in education mode, right? We're always educating ourselves, but you have to take action at the same time. But being around people that are doing it, it's going to rub off on you at some point. Sure. Maybe some people it may take a week. Some people may take a couple of years, but it's going to rub off on you no matter who you're around. Their habits and traits are going to rub off on you.
Yep. Absolutely, man. Well, it's been a great conversation. I know there's more to your story. We'll have to have you back on, talk a little bit about, I want to dive into your new mastermind, but maybe we'll do a part 2 and and have you on again. So appreciate your time today, man. And where can people find you?
Yeah, they can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Jon Farling on Facebook, and I think it's J Farling Investing on Instagram. Those are 2 best places. Definitely appreciate you having me on. This is awesome. Good luck on your podcast. I'm excited to see where you take this thing.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Well, hey, man, have a great rest of the day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks.